So, Justin, would you like to start? Give you a quick introduction?
Is the mic working? Yes, it is. Okay, great. I'm Justin Bonds from Cyber Capital. I've been a full-time cryptocurrency researcher since 2014, and the fund that I manage is actually one of the oldest hedge funds in Europe. And actually, we've been holding Ethereum as our largest asset in the fund since 2016. So that explains why I'm one of the only ones actually wearing a blazer here today, I've noticed, because I do help to bridge the crypto native and crypto institutional world, so to speak. So you all don't have to. Right.
Woo! Well, this thing on? Yes? That's a great introduction. Nice to meet you. My name is Adrian. I'm a developer. I work at ETHDay, which is a data art platform using NFTs. I'll keep the intro short so we can get into it.
Yeah? Well, Justin, what is your viewpoint on NFTs and what do you think about them?
So I'll start with an opening statement since this is a debate, and I've multiple arguments, but I think the first one that I'll give is this. I would argue that when people go on to most NFT platforms, including your own, that they're not actually buying a work of art. What they're buying is a hash on a blockchain, okay? Which doesn't have any copyright, which doesn't have any solid connection to the art itself, so to speak. So in my view, what people are doing is spending millions of dollars on buying what are essentially a series of numbers and characters that exist on a blockchain that are unique, that's true, but to human eyes, a string of numbers and letters doesn't look particularly unique, and people are not actually buying the art in these cases, especially if there's no copyright attached to that particular NFT.
Okay, so we're just buying numbers on a blockchain.
Correct.
I don't disagree, so we can start there. So what is the question again?
Yeah, what's your viewpoint on NFTs?
Right. Above all, it's almost like a 0 to 1 moment, technologically speaking. I think it's something that has been discussed for many decades that we are now finding ways to execute on. We've been seeing that for the past few years, like before even Ethereum. And now, I think since last year, we saw a massive explosion of use cases. And I'll say that one main value of NFTs that we see is that it's bringing a lot of adoption to blockchains, right? So I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think a lot of people don't disagree with what you're saying, but people still enjoy NFTs.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm surprised you're agreeing with my opening statement here that, that people are just buying hash on a blockchain and not actually buying the art. I think most people do believe they're buying the art, and that's problematic. Furthermore, saying that NFTs are good because it brings people to Ethereum, I mean, there's some issues with that as well, right? Like, I could start a Ponzi scheme over Ethereum, and I could say, hey, this is good because it's bringing people to Ethereum. I don't believe the end justify the means, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
I mean, this is supposed to be a debate.
No. But I think the argument here of a hash, ultimately there is some form of image behind it, and they believe that they are purchasing a piece of art. They believe. That's the key thing, whether they are or not. And I think that's where the intellectual property side of it is also part of this, right? I don't know if you think that when you sell an NFT on a marketplace that, yes, you are selling artwork. I'm not sure how you perceive that.
I think it's important to separate the selling of an NFT from the existence of an NFT, from the ownership of an NFT, from the transfer of an NFT, right? So we can talk specifically about the market aspect of it, the NFT financialization of it, which I agree, you can create a Ponzi around it. You can raise $75 million in hours, right? Just like you can do with a animal meme coin, right? But what we are also discovering is the value of ownership, the value of deeds, online deeds, right? Not just the deeds that we know as a house, but a good deed, right? I can give you a gift, right? And this gift has value. Why? Well, it's not just an image, a GIF that I found online that I just email it to you. it's actually an NFT, a hash on a blockchain that has some sort of a tangible value attached to it.
Why do you believe a hash on a blockchain has an intrinsic value? Because we're not connecting it to the art, and you agree with this?
I would say that, talking about Ethereum specifically, we discovered like a fungible token standard, right, many years ago. And suddenly we're like, oh, we can do fundraisers around this. We can do like ICOs around this because we can treat these tokens on the blockchain as some sort of hard money, right? So we are seeing now with NFTs a similar thought process around more subjective value things, right?
I mean, that's problematic because I'm coming from it from the perspective of a fundamental investor, right? I'm looking for real value, I'm looking for real utility. And if you just say, well, this is valuable because people believe it's valuable, or this is valuable because people buy it with the belief they can sell it again later, I don't think that's different to the modus operandi of a Ponzi scheme investor either. And I don't think that's necessarily a mentality we should be promoting in cryptocurrency. If anything, I would even go so far as that it puts a lot of people off, right? Like a lot of the gaming world and a lot of the world outside of us looks at NFTs and they don't want to look at the rest of cryptocurrency because it clearly looks like a scam. I mean, you're basically saying, hey, it's good for raising money. I mean, that is not a good reason in of itself, obviously. I mean, at that stage, you're just grifting people.
But I think from the creator side as well, right? An argument maybe to be made is the fact that, you know, it's enabling a lot of creators to actually, you know, stop their job for whatever they're doing and actually enter the ecosystem and become artists for, like, which for them is actually can be now be a full-time job.
Right. Also to answer to your point, I think one thing that happened, especially last year, that we saw like a whole onboarding of a lot of quote-unquote Web 2 folks into quote-unquote Web 3 and all those buzzwords that, let's not talk about that. We can go back to like, okay, where the whole Web 1 and all of those aspects of it that has lingered around, right? Like the participatory, the cultural aspect of the internet, right? So now with this quote-unquote Web3, we get to create new forms of experiences, new forms of infrastructure, projects that leverages this implementation of NFTs to create new experiences for people, new ways for people to transact, new ways for people to form communities, new ways for people to coordinate.
I mean that all sounds nice, but at the end of the day, people are spending very large amounts of money on effectively buying nothing, I would argue. I mean, like, just a hash on a blockchain is basically nothing. I mean, there's more hashes on a blockchain than there are grains of sand on the planet. I mean, it's not particularly rare or unique in that sense. I think to a certain extent, people are even being fooled into thinking that it is a unique work of art. I mean, I'm sure you've all seen this type of language being used to promote this, and I think there's a real gap in understanding. I'll take it a layer deeper as well. I would even go so far as to say that this idea of blockchain and art and NFTs, I don't actually believe that this is a problem that blockchain solves, right? Because if we're talking about something like a cryptocurrency transaction or a smart contract over Ethereum, the reason why that works is because the blockchain is able to see itself. It's aware of what it is doing within itself, and it can enforce itself internally. That's why cryptocurrency transactions work. Now, in the case of something like an NFT, which say you have something like copyrights and all these things involved, the blockchain is unable to enforce this. The blockchain is unable to stop someone from copy and pasting the image. The blockchain is even unable to really enforce anything around copyrights either. That is actually down to the legal jurisdiction. So say hypothetically you do create NFTs with attached copyrights, I would go so far as to say that actually at that stage using an NFT is actually the use of blockchain for an NFT becomes superfluous. in that it's not required for this particular use case. It's not actually a use case that blockchain solves. And in many ways, it's actually distracting from the real innovation and the real forms of expression. Now, I'll say one last thing. I'm not completely heartless and cold. I do like seeing artists getting paid for their work, and I definitely think we need new solutions there. But I don't think that the NFT art space, the way we see it today, I don't see that being a real solution unless we have real, like, kind of legal acknowledgements in legal jurisdictions of the legitimacy of these things. And that's a coordination problem between governments, not a problem that blockchain can solve, fundamentally.
Okay. Few things to unpack. First, let's talk about the greater fool, right? The Ponzi aspect, the all the money raised. I would say that a lot of NFT enthusiasts are also tired of it. They can't wait for it to cease, right? The same way that we were all kind of tired by the end of 2017, by the whole ICO bubble, etc., right? We don't need an SEO raising $50 million every other day to solve whatever new problem that they decide they're going to solve. So that's one thing, right? I do believe that it's going to end. I do believe there is a tragedy of the commons going on. And I do believe that these astronomical valuations that we see around certain NFT projects will not be the same in the future, right? Then there is another point about the NFT references an image, which is the art, right? First of all, we can have a whole debate about what is art. That debate can be much longer than
Let's
this
not go there.
In part, you are right, and there are people misleading other people like that. In other parts, this is why, quote-unquote, on-chain NFTs are so valuable, because you get to use the blockchain to also not just enforce, but also produce the art, right? So, yeah, I lost track of myself, so let's just...
No, that's okay. And actually, that's something that's unique about your project. You're actually using blockchain data to generate the art, as far as I understand, which I think is very interesting.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, based off of what you've just said, is there a version of NFTs using blockchain technology in some capacity in the next 10 years that you're like, yes? Or in your mind, should the application of blockchain focus on the monetary aspects of it, the smart contract execution for things like DeFi?
Yeah, so I'm not convinced at all that NFT for artwork and royalties, that this is actually a problem that blockchain solves. And even if you were to attach royalties and copyright to something like that, right, that it becomes pointless. And actually what's even more important, if there is a dispute with an NFT over the ownership over an NFT, you have to ask the question, well, who is the leading authority here? Is it the legal jurisdiction or is it the blockchain? And if you attach copyrights, it's clearly going to be the legal jurisdiction because that has enforcement in the real world, right? And that's important to keep in mind. And that's why I'm saying that the use of blockchain in the case of NFTs is actually, it's not solving anything. And I think that's quite critical. You also brought up the 2017 ICO bubble and comparing that to the current day NFT bubble. This is a comparison I think we hear a lot. But I think it's important to keep in mind that, in my view, I think a lot of very important things were built during that during that ICO bubble, and a lot of really important projects, a lot of the blue chips that we really admire today in DeFi were funded during that time period. I mean, sure, there was a lot of things that didn't make sense, but there was also a lot that did. And I don't see the same thing in the NFT space today because it doesn't make sense from a fundamental perspective in terms of what problem are you actually solving. I don't think any problem is actually being solved here, and it's starting to look a lot like the high-end art market, which has a ton of problems. It's just the case of these very rich individuals selling NFTs to themselves and then selling it on to the next person and using it as a form of money laundering, et cetera, et cetera. Considering also the non-fungible aspect of this, it means it's trivial to fake prices and all of these things. So in that sense, if we look at the high-end art market and we look at the NFT market, what problems are actually being solved here? I don't see what problems are being solved. It's just a new manifestation of that phenomena. right? And don't get me wrong, I think there's lots of people in the NFT space that really do have the best of intentions, and I do believe you're one of those people. I don't think you're a grifter
Thank you.
Or anything like that. But I do think it has those aspects. And I think that's problematic. And there certainly are people as well that are just straight up scamming people knowingly, right?
Yes. So, okay, a couple things. What problem we're solving? Throughout 2017, we saw a lot about banking the unbanked, right? There was like a common thing people say. I personally don't like that so much. But we can say that today we are not banking the unbanked. We are giving artists, how can we put this? We're giving value to the work that artists create. We're giving them financial independence to some extent, right? We are liberating them from doing purely commercial work and actually express themselves artistically in a digital medium, right? Which I think is really important, right? We are, at the same time, empowering underrepresented communities in the very similar way that we do in DeFi, right? Via a more subjective way, via a more artistic, creative way. There are creatives all over the world, and these creatives are the same people that we're trying to bank with DeFi.
I mean, I just wish that there was a better solution for these people, one that doesn't end up, as I mentioned, you know, quote unquote, scamming the buyers.
Right.
That's the problem with it. Like, yeah, I agree. The one side of it is nice, that artists get funded. I might not always agree with the allocation of that funding if you look at the quality of a lot of the work out there. But, I mean, that's nice. I agree with that. I can't say, oh, no, that's terrible. No, of course, that's a good thing. And that's all great, and that's all fluffy, and that's all nice. But it doesn't change the fact that on the other side of that transaction, someone's spending a lot of money for something that they're not getting. Right? They're not getting the thing they think they're buying in most cases.
Yes. So that one I forgot to answer about. Some will tell you that you are buying the artwork, and that might be accurate because the artwork is on chain. That might be misleading because the artwork is on AWS, right? That is more of a problem of a narrative, above all. Yeah. Some might tell you that this is a certificate, the certificate of the artwork, and the artwork lives somewhere else. And you are transacting exactly the certificate, right? So let's say that the artwork lives on IPFS, but you get to sell this NFT that represents the ownership of that image, right? So
no, but hold on. We agreed earlier that if there's no copyright attached, owning the NFT is not owning the image. It's not owning the work of art. You don't actually own it. What you own is a hash on a blockchain.
Well,
and this is what I mean about the problematic language here, right?
Well, one argument that could be made outside of art is, for example, the tickets that everyone has here today, Goods tickets, is also an NFT, and everyone thinks that they own a ticket, right? We let everyone in.
Oh yeah, actually, I didn't answer your question from before, and let me just do that now. I'm specifically here critiquing the art use case. I do think that ticketing, specifically for NFTs, that's a use case that makes sense for NFTs. I'm currently investigating property and NFTs, but I'm not actually convinced of that use case just yet. But obviously, you know, ticketing and property, that's very far removed from what we see in the majority of the NFT world.
For example,
today.
with property, do you see that there's then an extra legal link that then links that NFT to the real world?
Well, that's the part I'm unsure about. I'm
yeah.
still just keeping an open mind on that subject in particular. Ask me in a few weeks, I will have made up my mind. Yeah. I'm probably going to side with it doesn't make sense either. But ticketing makes sense, and there's probably a few more use cases that make sense, but it's very limited in comparison to something like what we see in the NFT world today and all of the hype around it. And, you know, I understand the perspective, right? Like if you're making a movie, right, and you're going to maybe gross 20 million off that movie, if you do an NFT sale alongside that movie, you might make an extra 40 million on top of it. Why wouldn't you do that, right? Like that's brilliant from the perspective of the person releasing the product.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is, it's also an ethical issue, is that what are people actually buying? And that's where people are potentially getting grifted, and potentially where a lot of people might actually get hurt as well, when they're buying into NFTs thinking it's an investment and they're not on the inside, they're going to lose a lot of money. And that's something I'm concerned about as well. Both, you know, people getting hurt, and also all of this just giving cryptocurrency as a whole a bad reputation, because, you know, we are here because we believe in cryptocurrency, and it's got this amazing, profound power to like change the world for good. And if we're so, and if what people see is this frivolous NFT thing, this borderline grifting thing, then people are going to look at that and they're going to judge cryptocurrency, and they're going to maybe shy away from it when otherwise they wouldn't have. And in that sense, I think it's negative.
Yeah.
Yes, I would argue that they do that even more to fungible tokens than they would to NFTs. So that's a whole
There's plenty of scams all over crypto.
yeah.
But
And then we can definitely talk about the different use cases of NFTs, art being one of them. ENS is a very, very common one that I think we can all agree has value to it. And I would also say that they are more similar than we think, because the art aspect of it is just a subjective human expression in many ways. So we found a way to digitally give a tangible form, some quote-unquote tangible form of value to these more subjective human expressions. Right?
I want to say there's one point from an audience member here that I quote, Zoomers don't care about copyright. NFTs are a nihilistic memes culture. Trying to understand this with logic is futile.
So we live in a new paradigm of incentives, right? So a lot of these more crypto-native Zoomer creatives who are starting to experiment with their creativity in this digital medium are seeing NFTs exactly like that. It's not so much about combining the licensing of the traditional world with this new format, or whatever you want to call it. They are fully onboarding themselves into this medium, using NFTs as material, and transacting completely in a digital way.
right. But the problem with that is that it can't be enforced. So without enforcement, right, it's not a true form of ownership. Like that's critical in all of this, right? Like if it's not a true form of ownership, and I noticed this, you keep linking it back to the art. When at the beginning of this debate, you agreed people are not buying the art, they're buying a hash on a blockchain.
And that hash can be art.
Well, hold on here. You're saying the hash itself is art?
In some sense,
I mean that's a stretch. I know you can get all abstract and define anything as art, but a literal random set of numbers generated by a cryptographic protocol, no, that's not art, okay? I mean, maybe you can't perceive it as art, but the point is, most people buy NFTs because they believe there's a linkage from that hash to the work of art itself, and that's what you were implying as well. What I'm saying, that's not the case. There is no link between the NFT and the work of art that they believe it is linked to. What they are buying is a string of random characters and numbers, sometimes for millions of dollars, and I think that's crazy.
well, they are also paying to be a noticed superfan of an artist that they look up to, for example. They are also paying to be part of a community. They are also paying to feel something online in many ways. So at the end of the day, if the NFT is a hash, which has its visual representation, if the NFT is a hash that points to an image hosted elsewhere, the value that somebody might feel from holding that, from transacting there, is still there.
Yeah, I see what you're doing there. You're saying it gives people a feeling, and they can project any feeling and meaning upon anything, basically. But come on, that's just fluffy talk. That's just, you're not saying anything by saying that. I could imbue the same meaning in this plastic cup. It doesn't mean that someone's going to buy it off me for millions of dollars.
If it has a floor price, maybe.
Hey, I mean, if you do, I've got a bridge I can sell you. But you know, I mean, that's kind of the point here. In that, once you cross that line, you could sell anything to anyone because you say, oh no, we're imbuing it with meaning. But if you're really thinking from the perspective like fundamental investment and real value and sensible economics and not wanting to scam people, you can't use that argument.
How much do you think a banana taped to a wall is worth?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
How much do you think a banana taped to a wall is worth?
Sorry,
A wall?
You take a banana, you tape it to a wall,
Yeah.
and you call that art. How much is that worth?
I believe it went for like 400 million, what was it, 20 million? I don't remember how much that was sold for, but I'm familiar with the particular thing. Well, again, I'll take it back to all of the problems that are wrong with the high-end art market are also problems that are wrong with the NFT market. There's a huge mismatch in terms of the real quality and merit of the artist and where this money is being allocated, because it's not about the art. It's about speculation. It's about virtue signaling. It's about money laundering. It's about all of the same things that the mainstream art market is about, which just goes to show that this iteration of modern NFTs is not solving any problem. It's just enriching certain people at the cost of others. I don't think that that is a good thing.
Well, if it's good or bad, I mean, that's for other people to say, but it's something that we've been doing for centuries.
Yeah.
It's something that, what is the quote? Wherever commerce goes, art flourishes. So we're seeing that in the digital realm.
Okay, we have to wrap up.
I'll make a final comment here based on what you're saying here. So look, if you say everything is relativistic and everything is subjective, then nothing can have any real meaning and truth is completely subjective. Like, I would disagree with that, generally speaking. I do think we can identify real value, and there are such things as sound economics, and it's not all just in the eye of the beholder. There is a hard physical universe, and if you're selling people a dream that is completely immaterial and people are maybe losing their life savings to that, I would seriously question the ethics behind that, because what you're doing with this type of relativistic talk, you could sell anything to anyone using that sort of argument. That is not a strong argument for NFTs at all. You're basically admitting that there is no unique value, there is no unique innovation in NFTs whatsoever.
Just like Ethereum has no features, right? So.
Well,
there's a good place there.
The reality is I don't know if anyone has the total market cap of NFTs right now, if you would aggregate it, but I can tell you one thing, it's a shitload of money. So the reality is obviously, yes, what you're saying, I do agree, has some substance, but the reality is also saying something different, and there is an inherent belief in the art market NFTs, but also the fact that, yes, there are going to be applications of NFTs well beyond the art market, and I think everyone being here today is a proof of that. I hope that you guys got something out of this. That's the main thing. I tried to integrate some of the questions a little bit, but most importantly, I think if your grandparents start arguing now with you about NFTs, maybe you can take something away from this and you can be a little bit more soft with your response, unlike, someone over here. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Thank you.